Welcome back, Sober Family. This is another episode of Recovery Talk brought to you by Pro Recovery Power. I thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's going to be another great show. Before I move any further, I want to give a shout out to my boy Marcos at Bless Savage. You know, go check out his website. It's blesssavage.com. You can get your recovery gear there. But today, I have my man Ken on. He's very texting me. Where are you? I'm already here, bro. But thank you guys so much for all the support. I see all my regulars that jump on in here. I really appreciate it. You know, I say this all the time. You know, the purpose I started doing this was in the middle of the pandemic to, the people who are trying to get clean and sober during the pandemic, they didn't have the same resources I had when I got sober. So starting that is, I'm still wanting to carry the message. Somehow I figured, man, I'll make another page on Instagram, and that's what I did, and that's what I'm continuing to do. So I've been going live with other people in recovery, people that are sober, people that are alcoholics, that are addicts, people that have once had an addiction and they have overcome it. Now they're living in the solution. So that's what this is all about. My guest today, his name is Ken. I've known Ken for over 4 years now. He's a great guy. We belong to the same fellowship, and I'm really excited. I've heard his story a bunch of times. I haven't seen him in a while. Because of COVID and because he got a new job now. He's driving all across the country in this big semi. But anyways, I'll let him tell his story. I'll get him in right now. What's grounded, fam?
Hey.
What's up, bro?
How you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you, Ken?
I'm great. Thank you for asking.
All right. Hey, bro, you don't have is your light on? Your face is really dark. Oh, yeah. There we go. Now I can see.
We don't have to hide in the shadows anymore, right?
Yeah. That's that old behavior, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. What's up, man? I haven't seen you in months, man. Probably like a year almost.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah.
This pandemic, this pandemic is crazy, and that's something I'm going to get into when I share, my experience with the pandemic and my recovery, because it got scary for me for a minute, dude. It really did, because all of a sudden everything got shut down, everything got wiped out. We couldn't go to meetings, we couldn't interact in person. You know what I mean? And it was like, what do I do? I'm all alone. I'm isolated yet again, but this time it wasn't my choice. That was that was the ability to overcome it, because I didn't choose to isolate. I didn't choose to alienate myself from everybody like I used to.
Yeah. Go ahead, bro.
No, I just want to thank you for inviting me to come out and do this, even though I kind of strong-armed you into it, but
not really, honestly,
we all have a story, we all have a message to carry, and like I always say, if there's just one thing that I say today on here that touches somebody's life, that helps them get into recovery and get into the right direction in their life, then my job, I'm overpaid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm overpaid.
Yeah, but talking about the pandemic, it's like a bittersweet or like a kind of double-edged sword for people who are still alcoholics, like no recovery, no nothing. They're just living in their addiction, because alcoholics, if somebody's a full-blown alcoholic, they literally need alcohol to stay alive, to just get kind of normal. I learned when I went to school a couple years ago to become a counselor. I learned one thing. I was unaware of it, but alcohol is the only drug that can kill you if you don't detox properly. I didn't know
exactly.
That. I thought it was heroin, but it's not. It just
opiates. Alcohol.
Yeah,
it's alcohol.
Yeah, man.
That stuff's vicious.
Yeah, so I've heard people talk about, look, they're closing down churches and gyms, and why don't they close down liquor stores? But uneducated people, may not know. I don't. If you drink alcohol, that's really none of my business, honestly. Doesn't bother me, But as far as recovery goes, I'm a voice for recovery for people that are, trying to get sober, people who are seeking out help or looking for some sort of direction and guidance and inspiration and things like that. What's up, Marty? But yeah, bro. So before you get into your story, I'm gonna ask you a few questions.
Sure,
Now,
fire away.
yeah, okay. How long have you been sober?
I've been sober. My sobriety date is January 7th of 2016. As of last month, I celebrated 5 years of sobriety. As of today, I've got 1,891 days of continuous sobriety, one
That's
day at a
right.
time.
That's right.
but
That's right.
who's count? But who's counting, right?
That's right. And then, so where are you from?
I'm originally from Southern California. I grew up in I was born and raised in East LA, and then we migrated to the San Gabriel Valley. I grew up there, went to high school there in the Covina area, and then I migrated out to the Inland Empire, and I bounced around all over the places you'll hear in my story, and I joined the Army. I went to Oklahoma. I went overseas. I've been, and now I'm living in the city of Victorville, up in the high desert.
All right, all right, okay, bro. So at this time, I'll give you the floor to tell your story, bro. So here we go, everybody, hang on.
Oh, here we go. All right. Again, my name is Ken, and I am an addict and an alcoholic. And first and foremost, I want to thank God for my life today, exactly how it is at this moment in time, for allowing me to go to sleep at night instead of passing out, and waking up each morning instead of coming to. Because before I got here, before I got to these rooms, that's what my life consisted of. Again, my sobriety date, if you didn't hear it before, it's January 7th of 2016. I have just over 5 years of continuous sobriety, and that's all one day at a time, and that's due to the grace of a loving God. Right. When we get asked to speak, we're asked to tell in a general way what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. What it was like. So I grew up. I'm Hispanic. I'm from a very large Latino family.
Really? I thought you were just a white guy.
No. hey, from the people I hang out with, most time people are like, "Are you black?" I'm like, no. I did. I just go where the recovery is, brother. That's all that is.
That's right.
But anyways, I was born and raised in East LA, and I grew up I was the middle child of 7 of a very large, like 7 kids in a large Mexican family. At a very early age, I was, and here's the thing, I have to say this for everybody, is that this is not what makes us an addict or an alcoholic. What makes us an addict and an alcoholic, and the one thing that we have to truly understand when we get here, is that we are an addict and alcoholic because of the inability to stop drinking or using once that begins, and then also the inability to stay stopped if we ever do stop. And that was usually when we ran out of money, somebody kicked us out of their house, or we were run out by the cops or whatever. That's what makes us an alcoholic and an addict. It's not the things that happen to us, the things that happen in our life, the things that are done to us, especially, like myself, like many others that have told their story. At a very early age, I was taken for granted and abused by an older brother. I was, and I'm, like I said, that doesn't make me an addict or an alcoholic. But the thing is that that's part of my story, and that's my truth today. And I share my truth, because unless I let go of that truth, I can't be set free. Right. That's the thing. And then today I have that freedom, because I'm able to speak about the things that have happened to me in my life, and then that went on for several years when I was very young. And then I have another older brother who decided at one point in time when I was 8 years old that him and his buddies wanted to see what it would be like to get an 8-year-old boy, a little skinny 8-year-old kid high off of marijuana. And had I known, and they told me, smoke this or we're going to beat the shit out of you. And here's the thing. Had I known then what I know now, I'd have taken an ass whooping. Because from that first hit, that first pull off of that first joint, I fell in love. That is my thing. That was my thing. At 8 years old, I fell in love with marijuana. And, it's a scary thought that how people think, how can an 8-year-old kid fall in love with something like that? It's instant. And that should have been one of those ominous warnings. But again, I was only 8 years old and I didn't know what was going on in my life. And, you know, to move forward a little bit, by the age of 10 years old, I was already starting to drink. You know, I'd be around those aunts and uncles and stuff at parties. And, you know, they'd send the, you know, big Mexican family again. They'd send the kids to go to the refrigerator, go get them a beer, or to the cooler to get them a beer. And they'd be like, open it. Or you can be my taste tester. So you take a little sip off the beer every time. And, you know, you do that 15, 20 times a night at 10 years old and you're weighing 70 pounds, you're going to get loaded real quick. And again, had I known then what I know now, I would have told them, you get your own shit. Because I fell in love with that ease and comfort, what that alcohol did to me, how it made me feel. And then a little bit later on, you know, I started to feel alienated and I started to feel alone because I had older brothers and older sister, and then the little ones, they didn't, they got the attention from the parents, and the older ones didn't really want a whole lot of attention with me because we were a few years apart. So they had their own things going on, and they didn't want the skinny little kid hanging out with them because I was stepping on their toes and ruining their, you know, their mojo, you know, with the older brothers. So then I felt alone, and I felt unwanted, unaccepted. And, you know, I started to hang out with the in crowd per se, and only because they wanted me to be their little runner. And what I mean by that is they'd send me into the liquor store. They'd send me into the grocery store to steal a bottle of booze. And because I was small and fast, I can escape. I was skinny. I can get through little cracks and crevices and outrun the management at the stores. And, you know, and that gave me a place, you know, that made me feel accepted. That made me feel wanted. And, you know, I did that for a little while. I hung around with those kids, and I felt like it wasn't enough. It still wasn't enough. And so I stopped hanging out with those kids, and I got involved in sports. And now that's where I found my niche. I thought, you know, I became a real good athlete. I ran track. I played baseball. I played basketball. I played football, and I was very good at all of them. And the thing is that you know, that became my new drug. That became my new drug. And with that, you know, the accolades, the pats on the back, the acceptance yet again, you know, it made me feel good about myself. And when I should have felt good about myself all along just for being who I was. You know, that's the thing that I never realized how important it is to just accept who you are for what you are. Not for what you can give somebody, not for what you can do for somebody, just simply because we're here. We're all God's creatures. You know, God put us here for a reason. You know, we have a purpose. And my purpose today is to be in a format like this and carry the message to another addict and alcoholic. And that's what I found out. Now, but as my story moves forward, you know, I graduated high school. I joined the Army because, like I said, came from a large family. My brothers and sisters, you know, my parents couldn't afford to send me to college. Even though I was a good athlete and a good student, they could not afford to send me to college. So I tried to get scholarships, and because I couldn't get scholarships based on what I wanted to get, you know, based on academics, I got recruited to play football and run track at several universities, but because they didn't want to give me what I wanted, I said no to their athletic scholarships. Stupid guy. Because I ended up joining the Army, and which was not a bad thing, because I joined the Army to try to get the money to go to college when I got out. That I ended up in some experiences that might not have been the best situations for a kid that was 19 years old. You know, I was sent to basic training in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and from there I went to I did my advanced training down at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, and then I was sent overseas to Nuremberg, Germany, where I was working in like an X-ray tech kind of, but it was in a lab called nuclear medicine, which the machines were like X-rays, but they dealt with radioactive isotopes when they took pictures to get a better view. So I went over there to do some training, and I took a little vacation. Me and some buddies, we decided we were going to go exploring Europe, and we ended up in this wonderful place called Amsterdam. And the crazy thing about Amsterdam is back in the 80s, it was it was very easy. You just walk down through the red line district, and it's called the red light district for a reason. Everything's lit up in red, and you've got it's crazy because you got like these little shops, and it says drugstore, and you would think like here I tell you drugstore, you think CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens. No, over there, a drugstore is a drugstore. They've got marijuana, cocaine, heroin, PCP, all the mushrooms, everything, anything heroin, anything you wanted, right there in the drugstore. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy, And my buddies that I was with, they're like, let's go in, let's get a little something, So I started getting exposed to some really heavy drugs over there, and then next to, usually on either side or both sides of those drugstores, they had like these little brothels, and it was crazy because it was like window. It was you ever go by like a pet store and you see in the window you got the little dogs and cats and animals in the windows. Well, here they've got strippers in the window, taking their clothes off, and and you're like, oh hey, and then they flash you a sign with how much it is per hour or whatever you want. And that's another thing that we started getting involved in, was heavily into utilizing the prostitution ring over there. And for a 19-year-old kid who never experienced anything in his life, this was the greatest thing on the planet for me. Nobody can tell me what to do. Nobody can tell me that I'm not old enough. I can just have fun. And I started drinking heavily. I started using drugs heavily. And unfortunately, it got us into some trouble because we were supposed to be back on post, and 3 days later, we ended up coming back in a week and a half. So I got my first write-up, I got my first AWOL charge, and then since they said I couldn't behave like a soldier, a proper soldier, they sent me back to the States to get retrained, and I spent like 6.5 weeks in the stockade, or not the stockade, it's called the brig, in the Army. So I was basically in jail for 6.5 weeks, and they took pay, extra duty, all that stuff, So then I ended up with an injury, and I got sent home. And when I came home, the crazy thing is I came home with every intention on enrolling in school, getting my education, and becoming a better person. And I'm walking down the street where I lived, and I just got off the bus because my parents had to work and they couldn't pick me up at the bus stop or at the airport. So I had to take the bus back from LAX. And I get home and I'm walking down the street, and I'm on one side of the street walking up the sidewalk, and there's this other guy walking down the other side. And he looks at me and I look at him, and that look, Alika, we just look over each other and we do that little nod, it's like that, like that. And he nods yes, and I reached in my pocket, grabbed some cash, met him in the middle of the street, and we exchanged some. I gave him money, and I didn't even know what I was getting. That's the crazy part. I had no idea. He could have handed me a piece of doo-doo. I don't know. I was giving him money. He was giving me something. And what he apparently gave me was like 4 or 5 little white rocks. And at that time, I had no idea what this stuff was. I didn't know what it was. So I'm like, and he looks at me and he just gives me a thumbs up, and he said a few words. He said, you're going to love this stuff. And I said, okay. So I went home, and I knew my sister and her husband partied, and I went to them real quick, and I'm like, hey, I just bought this on the street. Do you guys know it? And my brother-in-law, his eyes lit up. He's like, oh, dude, that's some crack cocaine. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I know what cocaine is. I know what cocaine is. I know it picks you up. And he's like, well, you don't know what this stuff is. You're like, this is crack. And I'm like, okay, how do we do it? Do I chop? And I went to start chopping him. He's like, don't chop it up. He's like, just cut off a chunk. And I said, okay. I cut a chunk off, and he brings out this elaborate little glass thing, a pipe. It's got a stem and a big old bubble in it, the old school ones. And it's got it's got some Brillo in the end. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? Do we put water in it? And I'm thinking like a bong hit, right? And he's like, nah, we don't put water in this. He's like, I'm going to take a hit, and then just do what I do. And I said, okay. So he heats up the Brillo a little bit, drops the little chunk in there, and I see it melt, and all of a sudden I'm intrigued. I'm like, "Ooh, that was neat!" And I saw it melt. So I'm like, "Okay." So I'm watching him, and he's burnt, and he was using a pair of like those forceps with the cotton ball in the end, and he dipped it in Bacardi 151. And he's got this big old flaming torch, and he's running. I'm watching the smoke swirl, and now it's swirling in the bubble, and I'm getting hypnotized by this shit. And I ain't even hit it yet, Alika. I ain't even hit it yet, and I'm falling in love. I'm like, oh my God, I want to do that. So I'm watching him hit this, and then I'm watching him, and I'm watching the change in his face as he's inhaling this smoke. This white cloud is just forming and coming inside of him, and I'm like, and his eyes are getting bigger, and he's starting to, his chest is welling up because he's holding it as long as he can, and then he lets out this big old cloud, and then he's like, looks at me, and he's like, "Oh, dude, that's the shit." And I'm like, "Well, give me that. That's mine. I paid for it." So I take a chunk and I throw it in there. I didn't even wait. He told me, "Wait till it cools down." I'm like, "Nah, I got to hit this now." And I threw it in there, and it melted like really fast. And I went to take a hit, and I didn't get shit. I'm like, "Oh, this stuff sucks." He's like, "Dude, wait till it cools off." So I'm like, okay. I sat there for about a minute patiently, and I'm sitting there blowing on the Brillo to make it cool so I can, and I put that piece on there, and I burned it, and I hit it just like he did, nice and slow, and it drew it in. And again, had I known then what I know now, I never would have taken that first hit, because that first hit that I really truly got, I fell in love yet again. Yet again, I fell in love. And it took me on a journey for a few years. I lost several jobs. I got kicked out the house a few times, got my car repoed. Girlfriends left, girlfriends came, or I should say tricks came, because they weren't really girlfriends. They just wanted to hang out with me because I was buying dope. And that's the life I started to live. And it became very dangerous for me, because I lived in a part of town in Baldwin Park that if you got stuff from somebody and you didn't pay for it right away, it was okay. They would front you, but you better pay them when you tell them. Don't, because if you didn't, you got hurt. And I ended up getting myself in some sticky situations. Luckily for me, and I'm not trying to brag, but luckily for me, I was trained in the military, so I was able to get out of some of those sticky situations. But then again, I did get a few ass whoopings, because 4-on-1 is not good odds for somebody like myself. And so this progressed for a few years, and then I met my my soon to be wife at the time. And I don't know what it was, but when I met her, because she was kind of a square, she was what we refer to as a normie. She can take a drink, it was funny. This is the first time I actually thought. I was 21 years old, and I actually got the thought in my mind when I saw somebody do this, is that she was one of those people that would get something to drink, an alcoholic beverage, take a few sips, and leave that shit alone and not pick it up. And I'm like, who does that?
It's alcohol abuse.
Yeah, that's exactly what you say. That's alcohol abuse. I'd be like, are you gonna drink that? No, then I would, and it's gone. And that's where my alcoholism started to really progress. Is that because I started to tell myself, well, I better lay off the drugs, because she might not like it. So I needed to mask that part of my life. So alcohol is acceptable. So I just kept drinking, but I didn't get sloppy drunk in public when I was with her. But when I was away from her, that's when it really started to kick in. And I started to make myself sick. I started to hang out with friends that I'm not saying they were bad people. It's just that to me at the time, they weren't my scene, but because they were buying the alcohol, I was okay with them. They let me crash at their pad, so I was okay with them. They let me use their cars, so I was okay with them. And occasionally they'd throw me their sloppy seconds, and that's how I had formed some of my relationships, was from sloppy seconds. But basically they were just tricks again. You know, they were just, because they wanted to be part of the scene. So I mean, I'm not saying I'm the best looking guy in the world. I mean, I'm not beaten with an ugly stick. So, you know, it didn't seem like it was a bad thing for them to come hang out with me. But the thing was the only reason why they did it is for drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. So, you know, at that point, you know, I started to settle down, because when I met my wife, she had a 1-year-old daughter, and we developed a relationship immediately out the gate. And, you know, she was immediately attached to me. She wanted to be around me. She wanted to hang out. So I couldn't go to the dope spots. I couldn't be drunk or high in public with her. So I had to slow down. And I did. I started to live the family life. And again, I started to feel like something was missing inside of me. And, you know, I ran into a friend or acquaintance, however you want to pertain, you know, refer to them. But I ran into this guy, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. And he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And we're like, "Oh, I'm catching up, you know. I'm in a relationship now. We live together, you know. We're talking about getting married, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "Oh, okay. Well, I got some dope. You want to get high?" You know, he didn't care about all that stuff. He just wanted to know if he just wanted somebody to hang out with and find a spot to smoke, because I had a car and he was walking, you know. So I'm like, you know, dope fiend mind said, "Sure, let's get loaded." So I said, I'm just going to smoke a little. I'm just going to take that one, and now I'm going to go home. And before I knew it, it was 5 days later, and I still hadn't gone home. Mm-hmm. I hadn't been working 4 days, you know, and my life was starting to fall apart. And that's when my wife gave me that ultimatum. She said, "Check this out, dude. If we're going to be in a relationship, you've got to make a choice, and you got to make it now. You're either going to stop doing all that stuff that you're doing." Wow, I'm getting flashbacks from those sirens, Alika. Like, oh, look behind me. But anyway, so she told me, she said, "You either stop, or me and Karina," that was my daughter's name. She said, "Me and Karina, we're gone." And I said, "Okay, I'm gonna stop." And that was my first time that I came into the rooms, and that's when I was introduced to the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous. And that was in September of 1992. And back then, things weren't people weren't as connected as we are today, because we're able to be connected like this right here. If you'd have told me 30 years ago that I'd be sitting here on a phone, on a little flat piece of plastic, basically, talking to people all over the country, all over the world, per se. Anybody can access this that knows one of us, and say, "Hey, you know, I'm in," because I know there's all that. I've already seen like a couple of names pop up of people I know that are in other states, that are in other parts of the country, that you know, if you'd have told me that 30 years ago, I'd be like, "Get the fuck out of here. That's crazy. We don't do that. What are you smoking? I want some of that." Yeah. You know, that's what I would have said. But you know,
the internet didn't even exist 30 years ago.
Yeah. So, you know, when I first came into the rooms, we had to depend on picking up a phone and somebody answering. If nobody answered, if they had an answering machine, you left them a message, and then they would get back to you when they had time. It's not as easy as it is today. And back then, you know, I was in the program, and when I say I was around the program, is more like it. It's the fact that I would go to meetings, I would hang out, but I wasn't doing the work. Mm-hmm. I didn't do the work. And that's the difference of being in recovery now and being in recovery then, is that, you know, I was around the rooms for 4.5 years. And I went, you know, I had ups and downs, you know, and I didn't get loaded. But when that one devastating event happened in my life, when I went through my divorce, and I reached out to people who who promised me that they were going to be there for me. And because of the limitations to our ability to contact each other, because they didn't pick up the phone when I called them that first time, I said, the hell with them. And I walked away from the rooms. I walked away from the program. And then so I had 4.5 years, we'll say 4.5 years dry, basically. I was sitting at a table across from a family member, and a buddy of his walks into the house, to his apartment at that time, and they start talking, and my brother and I were playing cards, and I've never played this one card game that I'm playing with my brother, so I'm really focused because I'm very competitive. I like to win. So I'm like, I'm going to focus on the game so I don't lose. And they're doing their thing, and then all of a sudden, I started hearing this on the table, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And I start to look around, and I see his buddies like all intent chopping up some lines on the table. And his buddy looks over at my brother, then looks at me, and don't even say those words. Never, not a word was spoken. And he reaches out with the straw and hands it out. And I didn't think twice, Alika. I grabbed it and I took it. And before I put it to my nose, I looked at him. I said, what is this? And he said, oh, dude, this is some good shit. I said, what is it? And he said, this is crystal meth. And I was like, my mind immediately told me, I've never tried crystal meth. Yeah, let's try some crystal meth. And you know, and I did this line that was probably about 3.5, 4 inches long, probably about a 1/4 inch thick. I mean, it was a big old fat line, and I'm like, it burned the shit out of my face. I thought somebody had just socked me in the face, and I'm like, oh my God, this hurts. And he's like, just give it a minute. I said, okay. And I'm like, oh, and get the drips and all that. And now I'm starting to get that effect that I used to feel. That first time again, yet again, Alika, that first one got me. That first one got me. All it took was that one. And I did that line. And I didn't even care about the pain that my eyes felt like they were going to pop out of my head from the burning sensation, you know, my throat. But then once it started to drip in and I started to swallow it and I started to taste it, I was like, ooh, what is this? I think I can do this. You know what I mean? And I said, and I'm sitting there, but then I started to get angry because 20 minutes had gone by and I felt nothing. I felt nothing. And I'm like, I burned the shit out of my face and I didn't even get a high. And I told dude, I said, let me get some more. He said, next one's going to cost you. I said, well, I'm unemployed. I'm broke. My wife took everything. I ain't got shit. He's like, well, you're asked out. And I'm like, well, okay, whatever. So I decided it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to go lay down and go to sleep. So I go and lay down. And I'm at my parents' house. I'm laying on the couch. And about 20 minutes in, I spring to life. Because it hit me, and it hit me hard. And I'm like, my heart is pounding in my chest. I'm sweating profusely. And I'm like, ooh. Now I got to get some more of this stuff. You know, I literally thought my heart was going to leap out of my chest, and my mind is telling me, you need to get some more of that stuff. There's that twofold disease that we talk about, you know, the obsession of the mind and the allergy of the body. The allergy kicked in and wanted it so bad, and then my mind's telling me, you got to get it. That's that obsession. We're going to do whatever we can. So now guess what I'm doing? I'm fucking army crawling on the floor in my parents' house to sneak into my parents' room to dip into my mom's purse to get some money to go get some shit.
Yeah.
You know, I'm literally army crawling like a fucking soldier on the ground. And I'm looking around. I'm lit. And I'm like, oh my God. You know, when I think back, it's like, wow. You know, so, you know, that took me on another journey, and that took me 19 years. 19 years, 5 trips to the county jail, 2 trips to prison, all drug related to get to where when I got released from prison, January 12th of 2016. And if it confuses you, you think January 12th of 2016, my sobriety date is January 7th of 2016. I was still getting loaded in prison. Yeah. And finally I had that that epiphany, that eye-opening experience that told me that, dude, you need to stop. Because I was getting ready to get paroled from prison, and both my daughters, who are now adults, I have two daughters. My oldest is now 31. My youngest is 26. And at the time, they were 21 and 21 and 26. And they told me, that's great you're getting out of prison, Dad. I don't know where you're going. You just ain't coming here. Because they both had their own spots. But they're like, yeah, you can't come here. I'm sorry. I love you, but you got to find somewhere else to go. And I didn't know what to do. I was being turned away by my own kids. And it was because of the things that I did in my life, the things that I took away from their lives. And and I'm not talking about material stuff. I'm talking about, I took their father away from them. I took dad away from them because I was always high, or I was always drunk, or I was always looking to get high, or I was looking to get drunk. One of those things I was always doing. And it took so much away from my girls. And my girls finally said, we're adults. We're making a life for ourselves. And guess what, Dad? We did it without you. So you're on your own, buddy. And that shit hurt. And I told myself, I was in my cell getting ready. I was getting ready to be transferred so I can get paroled. And I told myself, I can't do this no more. I can't live like that. And it wasn't about the things I had lost. It was about the person I had lost. The me. I was no longer myself. Because in prison, I became a ruthless, mean individual in prison. You know, because, prison is a very political environment. For those of us who have been there, we know what it's like. You've got to pick. You don't have a choice. You have to pick a side, and you've got to stick on that side. And there's only four sides. There's black, there's white, there's the Southsiders, and then there's others, which are in Asians and any other race that falls into those categories. So you've got to pick a side, and you got to stick with that. And, of course, being that I'm a Southern Latino, I had to run with the Southsiders. And because I have family members who are affiliated with Southern gangs, that I didn't have a choice either. So I had to do some things in prison that somebody, never mind just having to do some of the stuff, but somebody my age, I was 47 years old in prison, having to hurt people. You know what I mean? And that's not the life, that's not the way, that's not how I was raised. That's not how I was brought up. That wasn't the beliefs I had. But being in prison, you got to either whoop some ass or get your ass whooped. You don't have a choice. And I became a mean individual, and I don't blame my daughters for turning me away, because when I would talk to them over time, from when I first got to prison, and me and my daughter had a conversation recently about it. She was like, Dad, she says, I remember when you first got arrested, when you first got sentenced to go to prison. She said, you cried. She said, you cried. And she said, 6 months in, she said, I started to notice a change in you. When we would talk on the phone, your demeanor became a little more hard. Your demeanor became a little more detached from the rest of the world. And you became a person that I really didn't like talking to. And then another year went by, and she said, I didn't want to accept your calls at all, because she said, I couldn't believe some of the things that you were saying, some of the things that were coming out of your mouth. She said, that was not my father. And she said, that's what made me decide that I had to cut you loose, because I couldn't have that in my life. She said, I couldn't have that new person in my life. She says, I could have dealt with the old guy trying to come out and make a better life for himself and me helping you. But she said, you weren't that old guy. She says, you were a new person, and I didn't like that person. And I get it, and I understood, and I didn't see it until I got home and I got paroled, and some people helped me get into a place that literally saved my life. because I had reservations when I got back. You know, I thought, I think I can get away with taking my gate money and maybe buying a sack and starting to sell on the corners like I used to. And I got those old ideas again, and I was like, yeah, this might not work though. I'm now 48 years old, and I'm thinking, man, this is not gonna work. And so some people helped me, and they got me into what is called a men's transitional home, which is kind of like a halfway house, but it's not drug treatment, but it's somewhere to stay, to keep you off the street and get you some guidance, or So the people that ran that place, surprisingly, were people who had been a part of my life in recovery 25 years before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, who were there 20-something years before, and they said, check this out, Ken. When they were doing my intake, here was the craziest part. They're like, these are the rules of our facility. Blah, 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 blah. Now, those rules don't apply to you. Oh, I'm like, cool. I said, it's good to have contacts. They're like, no, those rules don't apply to you. We've got a new set of rules for you because we're not going to let you go this time like we let you go before. And that right there saved my life because they cared enough to tell me that they're going to do whatever they can in their power to make sure I stayed.
That's right.
And they started working with me, and they started guiding me, and they started helping me to change the person who I was. And I still didn't see that jackass, that asshole that I had become in prison until I got there. And one time, everybody has their own little cubby, like in jail or in prison, you got your own space, you got your own stuff, and you don't touch nobody's stuff unless they say it's okay. And so somebody had gotten into my stuff, Alika, and took a fucking Twinkie. One Twinkie. And I snapped. And I went ripping through everybody's stuff. I went through everybody's room looking for that Twinkie and the person who ate it. And guess what I found? I found the wrapper in my trash can. And the little light went on and said, oh my God, what are you doing? This is not you. And I had to do some work. And I got shanghaied by another group of gentlemen that were in my life from before, when I got invited to hang out with one of my a person who was my former sponsor. And I won't break his anonymity, but he literally saved my life, because he said, hey, he calls me up, he says, because he's the one who helped me when I got out of prison. And he said, hey, let's hang out. And this is a Friday night. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything. He's like, cool. He says, I'll get us some, you like fried fish? I'm like, sure. He's like, okay, I'll get us some fish and chips and stuff, and we'll meet at this place where we hang out on Fridays. And I said, okay. I said, give me the address. And he's like, okay, the place is 667 West Holt in Pomona. I never heard of this spot. I never heard of the place. So I'm like, okay, I'll meet you there. So I drive up, and I look at this building. And if you've ever been to 667, there's only one way in and one way out. There's one door, no windows, and you're like, I'm like, what is this place? And I'm thinking, what is this guy invited? Where did he invite me? And I'm like, what the hell? So I open the door and I walk in, and sitting at the table in the back of the room, which we call our domino table, is my former sponsor and 3 other gentlemen who were part of my life before. And every single one of them looks at me, and their eyes just like open up. They're like, oh my God. And I immediately got pissed at him, because I thought, dude, you set me up. What is wrong with you? And to be honest with you, I am so grateful for that experience, because had I not been set up that day, because that moment in time was the turning point in my recovery. Because like I said, I had all those reservations to go back and do the old stuff. And until I walked in that room and these men said, and I'm thinking when I saw these guys, now I'm embarrassed. I'm angry. Now they're going to humiliate me. They're going to berate me, belittle me, talk down to me, all that stuff, you know, because it's been 20 something years and they haven't seen me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and the first thing they do is they open their arms and they embrace me. Yeah. And they say, thank God you made it back.
Yeah.
And that was the turning point in my recovery, because right then at that moment I realized that somebody loved me other than myself. Mm-hmm. They cared about me, and they didn't want to see me go through the shit that I had been through before. Mm-hmm. So I told myself, I said, I'm going to give it 1 year. I'm going to stick around, and I'm really going to do some work this time. And Alika, you know as well as all of us who start doing the work, and we start learning about ourselves and our truth and who we really are. A year isn't enough time. A year is not enough time. So now I tell myself, after that first year, I said, okay, I'm going to stick around another year. Then I started getting involved, getting those commitments, started working with other men and women. And 5 years later, look where I'm at. Look where I'm at. I've got those 2 daughters who wanted nothing to do with me when I got out of prison. I don't know if you guys can read this. I'm going to try and hold it up so you can read this. It's kind of backwards, but it says, it said best grandpa ever. My baby girl is due on April 9th. She's having my first grandchild. It's a boy. And I get to be a grandpa today.
Nice.
I get to be a grandfather today. I get to be a father to those 2 girls that want me in their lives today. You know, the things that I put them through, that I took from them, I don't deserve it. That's what I used to think. I used to think, I don't deserve this. But you know what? The man that I am today, the person, the father, the grandfather that I am going to be today, I deserve every bit of it. I have a good job. I have a good life. I have a nice apartment. I got a brand new pickup. I get to travel. You know, last year at this time, I just got back from Hawaii. Who does that? You know, and guess what? I went by myself. I didn't have to go with somebody. I went by myself, and I could be trusted. You know what I mean? I played golf in Hawaii. I'm overpaid, Alika. I'm overpaid, you know, and it's all based on what I've learned about myself in this program, in this process. You know, until I started doing the work and doing the steps and learning about myself and who I am today, I don't think I ever would have come to where I'm at. You know, had I gone back to those reservations and done those things that I was planning on doing, I'd either been back in prison or I'd be holed up in a fucking parking garage. This is an experience. I got to share this little story. So one of my little experiences while I was smoking crack, it was middle of August, Pomona, California. And the year was 1992. Yeah, it was right before I got sober the first time. I'm smoking some dope, and I got paranoid. And I lived in this apartment complex in my parents' house, of course, because I couldn't do it on my own anymore. I got so paranoid because I had been smoking so much, because I got one of those, back then, you know, the GR check, the general relief that we used to get to survive. I spent the whole check on a sack of dope because I was getting the double up, you know? So I spent it all. And I started smoking early that morning, and by noon, I was so paranoid that everybody was out to get me. I'm in a pair of underwear and a wife beater, tank top, and some flip-flops, and I'm trying to run away, and I'm like, I don't know where to go. So I see a car coming down the alley, and I duck into a parking stall, and they have those little compartments that, little storage compartments.
Uh-huh.
And I duck in there, and I see this little this little cabinet, and it's unlocked. So I open it up, and I step on somebody's hood of their car, and I hop inside, and I close the door behind me, and I pry it shut, on the inside. And I stayed in there for 3 days with that sack of dope, that pipe, that lighter, in my underwear and T-shirt, smoking, just smoking. And when I finally came to realize that I needed to climb out, because I had gone to the bathroom so many times in that cabinet that it was bad. I needed to get out. And when I went to climb out, I cracked it open, and I didn't see anybody. And then I started to climb out. And at that moment, walking around the corner was the woman who was my girlfriend at the time that became my wife, and her daughter. And we had been living together for a couple years before that. And so the little girl was now 3 years old, and she looks up at me, and she looks up at her mom, looks back at me, looks back at her mom. And this is the little girl who already by this time is calling me daddy, knowing me as dad. Mm-hmm. And looks back at me and then says, "Mommy, who is that man?" This child didn't even know who I was. And that's what led me to the rooms the first time. But now, here's the thing, is that even if that little girl were here today or was there 5 years ago saying to me, you need to get help, I couldn't do it for her. I tried to do it for her, and it didn't work. Yeah. And until I realized that I had to do this for me first and put everybody, no matter who it was, second, I wasn't going to succeed. So once I started to do the work and I started learning about myself and my truth, and I got the ability to open up to another man, of all things, to another man. A man? Come on. I'm not going to show weakness to a man. Are you crazy? We don't do that. We just don't do that. Especially me being a Mexican. Hell no. We don't do it. And until I got vulnerable and I opened up, and as we put it in the rooms, I got butt naked and stripped down and just let him see everything about me and learn everything about me and washed all that stuff away. And that's why it's so important when you start doing the steps and you get to that part where you have to look back at who you are and who you were and clean house. Mm-hmm. That's where the freedom comes. That's where that freedom comes. I used to ask people, when do I get that freedom? And they would never give me a straight answer. They would say, you'll know when you got it. You'll just know. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, stick around, you'll find it. Just stick around. Like, I wanted to get it and go. That's what I thought it was about, getting here, getting that freedom, and then moving on. Mm-hmm. No, it's about getting here, opening up, experiencing life with another man, woman, and group like we have. And then guess what? You get to stick around. Because when we first get here, most of us, we get here because we have to. Mm-hmm. Now I'm at the point where I want to be here. Yeah. I don't want to be anywhere else. I can't see my life without this. Mm-hmm. If I don't have this, I don't have a life. Because I told God when I took that third step, I said, God, if you give me a life, I'll give my life to you. Mm-hmm. I don't care what kind of life it is, as long as it's not that one I had before. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And he's given me a life in abundance. In abundance. I don't worry about food. I don't worry about lights. I got lights. Uh-huh. It's like one of my brothers in the group says, I haven't had my lights turned off in such and such time. I can say that I haven't had my lights turned off in over 5 years, Alika.
Yeah,
over 5 years.
I've been sober. Me too. Same deal. Never.
And, never. My gas is turned on. My water. I can't have cable. You know, I'm
yeah.
You know, and shit don't get turned off. My car,
Yeah.
I don't worry about my car getting repoed. I don't have to hide it in somebody else's garage.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to roll quarters or forget quarters. Those were spent on dope. I don't have to roll pennies, dimes, and nickels just to put a few bucks of gas in my car.
Right.
You know, I have credit cards today. I have a credit rating today. Period. You know, life is so much different because I made that decision, that conscious decision, that when I got here, I told God, I said, check it out. Like I said, we have the steps, but the true first step is admitting to my innermost self that I am an addict and an alcoholic. And it says so in the big book. That's that true first step that we take when we get here. And when I did that, when I finally admitted I am an addict, I am an alcoholic. See, before I used to be, oh yeah, I'm a dope fiend, I'm a pothead, you know, those little labels we give ourselves. But but that word, and those sound stupid, those sound ridiculous. But then those little words like addict, alcoholic, those two words have so much meaning and they carry so much weight to them. When I'm finally able to say those two words, oh my God, was I set free? Yeah. Was I set free? Because I was just. Go ahead. You were gonna say something?
No. We literally have like 4 minutes left, but I have some questions I wanted to ask you. So we might have to blow through these questions pretty quick. Okay, hey, bro. Thank you so much, man. Like, it never gets old hearing your story, man. Like, I love it. This one was way more detailed though than the other ones I've heard, which is great. So that's good. So now I'm gonna ask you this: do you still get the urge to drink and use today?
You know what? I thought when I first, like a lot of people think when we get here that we're gonna get sober, we're magically gonna be relieved of any. You know what? We go through life, and those life experiences make us still feel some of the stuff that we felt, because we're still the same person inside, so of course, and sometimes in the beginning when I would be with family and friends and I'd see them drinking, I'd be like, it would be nice to have a beer. And sometimes, I've been through some stuff that will make your head spin, that I don't know how I got through it without drinking or using, and I've thought, I have had those thoughts, and I have had, but you know what? I give that stuff to God today. I tell God, take this away, do with me what you will, and I'll be okay. And I get through it. All
right. Okay, so here, bro. The next one is, okay, is everyone forgiving once you get sober?
Oh, hell no. Hell no. No way. I've been punched. I've been spat on. I've been told some very vulgar things by people who want nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
In the beginning, because they tell me, they're like, you think just because you've got 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, a year, that things are better, that you're different? You put us through too much shit. Yeah. But now 5 years later, those same people tell me that they're proud of me today.
That's right.
That they love me today for the person I've become, and the things that I've done to get here.
Yeah, you know what? That's funny because me, for myself, being like, how we talk about, we hear people share and things like that. Like, I'm 30 days sober. Like, where's the parade? Where's the pat on the back and this and that and all this stuff? My whole thinking towards that for myself personally was, wait. I don't want somebody, like, ever, no matter how long I'm sober, from day one or until I die. Like, right. I didn't ever want somebody to pat me on the back for doing something I shouldn't have been doing in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I understand what they're talking about because of the behaviors, the thinking changes, and our life is different. That part, yes I understand. So the next question, bro, is here. What part of the journey getting sober here would you change if you could?
Absolutely none of it. Right, simply because everything that I've been through in my life, everything that I've done, seen, or had done to me, has made me the man that I am today, because those experiences, I've learned from them. And I'm able to carry the message to another addict and alcoholic who's been through the same stuff. Because right. I can't help somebody get through something that I haven't been through.
Right.
You know, so if I've been through it, I can be like, oh yeah, hey, this is what I did, and this is what you can do in order to make it better for yourself.
That's right. Just pass off those experiences.
Yeah. So that I wouldn't change a thing.
Right on. Okay, the next one is what are some of the biggest challenges that you've had to push through in sobriety?
Oh my God. Let's see. The death of my brother. The death of my godmother, who was like a second mom to me. Those really took a toll on me. But because of the people in my life, like yourself and other friends in the program, I was able to reach out and say, help me get through this. Help me not drink and use. And see, those are the things that put us in that spot where we say to ourselves, because before we used to drink or use no matter what, anytime. If somebody died, if it was windy out, if it was sunny out, if it was, you know, a birthday, like, come on, a kid's birthday party and we're drinking like it's no tomorrow, like we're at the club, come on. You know, that was the things that we did. And, you know, when those 2 times were the hardest for me, because I truly thought to myself, if I took a hit, drink, fix, or pill, I wouldn't feel that stuff. I wouldn't feel that pain. And I had to feel that pain in order to move on to the next level and be able to share what I'm sharing today with somebody else.
That's right. Okay, cool, bro. So the last question is, what advice do you have for the newcomer, somebody, you know, trying to get sober?
For the newcomer, first, this is what I did in the beginning when I was a newcomer, is when I got here, I got inside the program. Instead of being around it, I got involved. And what that means to be inside the program is, you know, we make a reference in Pomona, and my sponsor started this, is that you get in the herd. It's like that, that herd of antelope that are out in the Serengeti in Africa. And then you see the group, and then you see that one idiot out there by himself thinking, oh, I'm going to eat over here because there's more grass, you know, and he thinks, I'm going to do my thing. And guess what? You got lions hidden all around that little guy, and he's the prey. And they pounce on him because he thought he could do this thing by himself. And I know for a fact, I can't do it by myself.
Yeah.
And that's the newcomer. You can't do this alone. You don't have to do this alone. That's what we're here for, is to be here for the newcomer. That's first. Second is find yourself a sponsor. Your sponsor is trust me, my sponsor is he's my rock. He's my rock. But he's my dad sponsor. Yeah, and he tells me what it's like. You know, he doesn't hold punches. You know my sponsor. Yeah. You know how he is. He'll tell you like it is. And first and foremost, you know, when we think that a sponsor is that person who's going to solve every problem, my sponsor tells me, did you go to God? That's where you go first. You go to God first. If God can't help you solve your problem, then come talk to me. And usually and you know from experience, when we take it to God, guess what? We don't need to go anywhere else. And you know, and here's the most important part. If you're a newcomer and you're watching this right now or sometime in the future, remember this. Don't leave before the miracle happens.
That's right.
Don't walk away from this thing before you give it a chance. You know, I've seen so many people, and I was one of them in the beginning. I thought, maybe this ain't for me. But you know what? Stick around for a little while. Learn something. Listen to some of the people who have been here before you. And get that guidance. And then most important thing is that, you know, it's like myself, you know, my buddy Alika's got 4 years. I've got 5 years. You know, my sponsor's got 32 years. You know, those are big numbers. But you know what? All we all have today is 24 hours. That is it. You know, the world record for sobriety is 24 hours.
Yep.
And we do that on a continuous basis every single day. You know, just like Alika, just like me, just like you, we're sober today. So we're no different. And hopefully I'll wake up sober again tomorrow.
That's right.
I want to thank you all. And Alika, thank you, brother, for having me.
Yeah,
you know,
thank
this
you.
This has been an experience. And like I said, if one person hears something that I say that touches them and helps them get through whatever it is they're going through and brings them to this side of recovery, my job is done and I'm overpaid. Yeah, thank you, Alika. I love you, brother.
Yeah. Love you too, guys. Good to see you. I'll call you.
All right, you too. Yes, sir. Have a good night.
All right, bro.
Bye.
Bye. All right, guys. That was my friend Ken. Now, if you have a story to tell, please reach out to me. I got my calendar booked, I think, for like the next 5 or 6 weeks ahead. But, you know, I can still get you on if you want to. You know, I really appreciate everybody always tuning in. My website, the Pro Recovery Power website, will be out very soon. I'm just making some more tweaks. I have my, here we go. If I can grab it. I got my hats in as well. I did a, what do you call it, giveaway right now. But I do have them if you guys just want to buy them. You guys don't want to wait to see if you want or not. You guys can DM me for that. But thank you guys again. I really appreciate your support. Tomorrow I got Suzanne all the way from British Columbia, from Canada, is going to be on. She's a co-host of a podcast called Seek Purpose. So I'm super pumped about that. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys tomorrow.